things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson with Reality Shifters and the International Mandela Effect Conference, and you're now listening to DarkWolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
Rippin' Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rippin' Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Hello. Introducing lasers. Hello.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light, and you're now listening to DarkWolf's Den.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness, this is the Darkwolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live worldwide from a secret mountain cave hidden high up in the beautifully snow-covered peaks of the Idaho mountains, ripping through the electromagnetic soup, tearing through the atmosphere, and tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the Darkwolf's Den Show for Thursday, January 14th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to carry on our discussion on consciousness as we have all the month of January so far, and we've been discussing through the month how consciousness is not in the brain, but making a case for the idea that consciousness exists outside of the body. And last night we really drove that home with the out-of-body experience episode, and we're going to continue to build on this with the near-death experience because, you know, we have a lot of similarities to the out-of-body experiences, except for this time death is involved and there's a little bit more to it, and we're going to get to all that and more here in just a moment. But first, today in history. On this day in 1964, Jacqueline Kennedy makes her first public appearance on TV since the assassination of her husband, John F. Kennedy. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, that is today's Today in History. And of course, a very sad and tragic time in American history, and it's never good to see a death of anybody. And, you know, a lot of times people don't get to come back and tell us whether or not they survived death, right? It's always been a big question, is death the end? Well, there are some people in this world that have died and have come back to tell the tale. And it's funny how quickly scientism dismisses these folks and acts like they're just out of their minds, or perhaps way too far in their minds according to scientism, and it's just a bunch of, you know, brain activity gone wrong. However, for those that have experienced an NDE and have come back to tell the tale, it's a completely different story. Like our first presenter tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Eben Alexander.
I had spent more than 50 years of my life developing my conventional worldview as an academic neurosurgeon, had come to fully believe that the physical world is all that exists and that the brain creates consciousness out of physical matter.
And I've made this point every single episode. I'm going to drive the point home just one more time. I fully disagree with the materialist and dogmatic scientism idea that consciousness is the happy accident of the brain. Non-conscious matter all of a sudden can arrive at consciousness. That's just a ridiculous idea to the point. And the idea that materialists think that that's what's going on is really kind of silly when you break it down. But again, I don't think that the materialists are right in that consciousness is in the brain. And soon Dr. Eben Alexander would find out the same thing.
And then I had a profound near-death experience. It all started by going deep into coma within about 3.5 hours due to a severe gram-negative bacterial meningitis. and I spent 7 days in coma. My doctors acknowledged that I had about a 10% chance of survival early in the week. By the end of that week, I was down to a 2% chance of survival with no chance of recovery. And it was hours later, after they recommended stopping the antibiotics, that I came back to this world. And all I knew at that time was where I had been, because in fact, all of my memories of life before, all of my words, language, personal knowledge of Eben Alexander's life, all my religious beliefs, scientific knowledge had been deleted in the midst of coma.
So all the world knowledge had been deleted, which is a scary thought, agreed, but it goes back to the idea that with the brain that is not working, then the receiver is having issues. If you have a radio and it's got a good receiver, you're going to get a great signal and you're going to hear the station just fine. The stream of ideas and the stream of radio waves will come in with no problem. However, when the brain is messed up or the radio is messed up, then the signal is not going to come in very clear and you're going to have a lot of issues, especially to the point where the knowledge held just within the brain is going to be gone. Now, do I think knowledge can be held in the brain? Absolutely. Does that make consciousness? Absolutely not. Not in my opinion. A computer has knowledge, but it's not conscious. We use it to look up the knowledge all the time, but you can't ask it and it have a full conversation with you, even though the AIs are trying to reach that point. But we're getting way off topic with this tangent, so I'm going to bring it back around to the point that the brain works more like a receiver to consciousness opposed to the creator of consciousness, in my opinion. That is why when Dr. Alexander had his near-death experience and the information and knowledge he did come back with was separate from the worldly knowledge that was already gained and that had existed within the brain tissues opposed to the conscious stream.
And all I knew was where I had just been.
And again, the only knowledge that he had when he came back was the knowledge of where he had been. A place that should not have existed, being that his whole brain at the time was literally a liquid soup. I know that sounds very disgusting, but that is what happens in the medical cases in which he had. So the brain should have had zero, I mean zero, consciousness ability. Yet he's having these experiences, these conscious experiences of another place that we're going to hear about here in just a moment. And what is intriguing is what he's about to describe in general. There's a couple things that is very unique to his story, but in general, this is what most experiencers describe. It starts with dying, and then they exit the body, right? They are literally floating above their body, and a lot of times they don't even recognize that the body they're looking at below is themselves. They just know that it's a body that seems to be not moving or perhaps dead, and usually it's later on that they look back and recognize what had happened, and then they go on this incredible journey,
which was a fantastic odyssey. It had begun in what I call the earthworm eye view, a very primitive course on responsive realm, but then led up through this slowly spinning pure white light.
And I always say, when you find case files of people who don't know each other, never met each other, would have no reason to make things up, and they share the exact same details across every single case file, then you start to know that there's something going on within these case files. There's something more than just chance and coincidence. And I've said this pretty much every show I've done, all 52 shows at this point, or 51, 52, however many we're at. But anyway, I've said this every single show so far, that if the case file data shows the exact same elements across all the case files, these are probably facts and not made up, things. And that's one thing that really makes me so mad about dogmatism, is they will look at these facts and dismiss them out of hand when clearly the evidence shows something more. But the bright white light is in every single case file of near-death experience that I've ever heard. As a matter of fact, it's so well known that physicist Carl Sagan even weighed in on the idea, and he suggested that the bright white light is our remembrance of birth or coming out of the canal. And there's some who have taken that to the other extreme and suggested that that could be the exit back into this world from another canal. And that's a whole nother debate and topic, and it very well could be. But with Dr. Eben Alexander's journey, it was only the beginning and the entrance to the other dimension, the spirit world or spiritual dimension.
With an associated musical melody up into a brilliant gateway valley, ultra real, far more real than this world.
The light had an associated musical value. Now, that is interesting. That's something you don't normally hear. But then again, different people describe the same thing different ways. So we do hear that it sounded like singing or angels singing. Perhaps this would be the exact same thing that Dr. Alexander's saying, that it had an associated musical element to it. But wait, there's more.
And in that world, of course, many kind of earth-like features, lots of plant life, everything blossoming and blooming, thousands of souls dancing below, beautiful girl on a butterfly wing.
Okay, the majority of souls being around, that is a normal part of the case files as well. However, the beautiful girl on the butterfly wing, that's all Dr. Alexander. I've never heard that particular part in any case file aside from the doctor's.
And reassurances that I was loved, that I would be taken care of, that I had nothing to fear.
And that's another example of things that come up in every single case file, the overwhelming amount of love and the lack of fear, and even being told there's nothing to worry about, you're okay, you're safe. It's the fact that all the people that have a near-death experience come back with the exact same answers.
And yet that was only a part of the pathway, a milestone on the way out to all of space and time collapsing down, even deep time, a different ordering of causality for our souls collapsing down, ascending through angelic choirs up into the core, infinite inky blackness, but filled to overflowing with that abundant love, unconditional love of the Creator for the creation.
And once again, this is something that you hear in every single NDE case file, is this overwhelming amount of love, this unconditional, unjudgmental love. And it gets that specific in almost every single case file. It's described as a unconditional love, a love like you rarely experience on the earth. No judgment, no conditions, a love freely given in overabundance. And of course, the many religions of the world speak of the overabundance of love of God. Whatever their God may be, it's always the same story. And then when a near-death experience happens to folks and they all come back with the exact same thing, saying that, the overabundance of love and unconditionality was just as overwhelming as anybody could imagine it being, and probably more so and more real. That's something else a lot of them say. It was more real of a world than this world, and the love, the overwhelming unconditional love that was presented was way more than what is normally experienced by a human on this earth.
God or deity, and there I associated that God with the sound Om. That's what I brought back to this world. And in my early writings about it, I even called that deity Om, because to me, the word God was a puny little human word with a lot of baggage that had nothing to do with the astonishing power, awe, majesty, and infinite love of that deity at the core that is one with all of us. So this was a very instructional journey as I came back to this world.
Now, I want to touch on this Om, because we know the ancient Egyptians, among most, did use the Om, as well as many, many, many other cultures. This is a well-known frequency that is very, very healing, it is said, to the human body and just to the human he looks like the soul too, right? You've got a lot of Eastern religions that use the Om and meditation and things like that. Perhaps they know something more than the Western civilizations are willing to admit. And I'll be the first one to say that if the Om and the things that Dr. Eben Alexander has described so far, and the fact that it does match up with Eastern religion, and they have the reincarnation belief, I mean, is it any wonder that we are having the near-death experiencers verifying things that, although materialists say can't exist, religions have been telling us about for hundreds and thousands of years?
Words and language came back over hours and days, childhood memories over weeks, all of my semantic knowledge of physics, chemistry, neuroscience, cosmology returned over about 8 weeks or so, but I was left with this tremendous mystery of trying to figure all this out. I'd never read the near-death experience literature before, but now I dove in full speed ahead and realized that the similarities far outweigh the differences.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the good doctor now agrees with me, and beginning, he was just a materialist when he was just a doctor and had never had an experience like this, and now he has looked at the data too, and he has looked across these case files, the same that I have for many, many years, and it sounds like he's coming to the same conclusion, that there's more similarities than there are differences.
And that is a very crucial feature. And in fact, the revelations that come from NDEs transcend one's prior beliefs. Even though the prior beliefs, religious beliefs, etc., can be used to flavor in the telling of the story, but often you have great revelations which challenge those dogmatic belief systems.
And again, hitting to the heart of the reason we're doing these episodes themed on consciousness this month and the dogmatic scientism that backs it. And this is only one of the many dogmas we're going to go through this year and tear down and show the ridiculousness of. But consciousness is something that I had studied for a long time, and the dogmatic scientism has really driven the study of consciousness into a realm where it doesn't belong. And I'm loving seeing these different doctors and scientists and people really coming forth and studying this from a real scientific point of view finally, and speaking up about things that were hidden for many years. And the dogmatic scientism that has brought us to this point needs to be battled against and stopped. It needs to be brought into the scientific realm and realm of real science, not science as a belief system. And as once again the doctor's learning through his journey so far, is that this belief system is highly flawed compared to the evidence presented by real experience.
And that is where I believe NDEs bring tremendous value to this world, because they really are a force of unification and of bringing us all together and realizing that we are all actually different facets of one mind.
Now, before you start calling this New Age information, once again, let me remind you, this is coming from a neuroscientist doctor who was steeped in materialism until he had experiences that made him question everything that he knew. And upon looking at this with the unbiased point of view and knowing what he actually knows, he's really changed his mind. And with that aside, the point that I want to make here is that he mentioned we are all one mind, having different experiences, and it would really go to explain once again why different people have the exact same idea at the exact same time with different sides of the exact same world. And it's over and over and over we've seen this, including Hollywood. There are directors that will write down their ideas on a napkin as soon as they get them and try to get them produced as soon as quickly as possible, because they know that there's many, many times that the same movie they've been working on, there was somebody else working on a movie almost exactly the same style. We've seen this many times in Hollywood. We'll have two movies come out that are pretty much the exact same storyline, and we wonder why that happens so much. That's actually circumstance and chance of people having the exact same idea the exact same time. And I don't think it's chance at all. I think it's the fact that we are all of one mind, this unconditional, wonderful love that binds us all, that one mind, that idea that we are all the same person, right? You've heard this idea too. We're all the exact same person. We just reincarnate into different, bodies each time and come back as a different person. I mean, taken to its logical ending, that could lead to, the idea of being one mind could lead to that idea. I completely agree with the possibility and chance of that. But again, it's amazing. It's not New Age speak. It's actual fact when you look into the details of all of these case files.
And that binding together of our minds and our experiences is all through the power of love, unconditional love, compassion, mercy. These are what NDEs bring to this world. And the world is certainly due for this kind of lesson, even though it's an ancient lesson indeed.
And I could not agree more that the world is overdue for a lesson in unconditional love, because you've got to love your fellow man. Does that mean disagreeing is wrong? Absolutely not. Disagree with love, though. There's two ways to have a disagreement, and especially if you go on social media today, there are some posts that show this, but most posts you see on social media today have a lot of hatred behind them. They are not speaking in love. They're speaking out of a quick emotion and not thinking in an unconditional loving way. Am I saying I'm not guilty of this? Oh no, I'm very guilty of this. I get heated and passionate about things. Sometimes I even forget about this unconditional love that we are all supposed to share with each other. However, I can say that there are posts on my page or pages that show conversations that are very heated topics, but they're conversations of disagreement in love. They're not arguments, they are legit conversations. And this is the way we need to do things, always in the unconditional love, right? That is how things will change in our own lives and in the world. Now, again, is fighting wrong? If you are forced into a position where you got to fight for what you believe and fight for what you know, no, it's not wrong. Just remember, fight out of love, not out of hate, out of that unconditional love that we should have for every person. And the world is overdue, I fully 100% agree with Dr. Alexander, for a lesson in this type of love. And this is the message that is brought back by every near-death experiencer. I'm not just sitting here preaching to you about love and, New Age, blah, blah, blah. There's actually a reason I'm going into this unconditional love and this unconditionality of the love and the way that we should treat others and treat the world. Because it is this message that all near-death experiencers bring back, this enlightened way of thinking, this enlightened love that they have for all of the world and all of mankind.
As an active neurosurgeon, the thing that was most perplexing about my illness, given that my doctors assured me that based on my neurologic exams, on the CT and MRI scans, on the laboratory values, that I had a very lethal bacterial meningitis involving all 8 lobes of my brain, I should have experienced nothing at all, according to our conventional neuroscience.
And it's not enough that I drive this point home. I would like the doctor to repeat that one more time. I'm going to play that again.
That I had a very lethal bacterial meningitis involving all 8 lobes of my brain, I should have experienced nothing at all, according to our conventional neuroscience.
And yet, people that have this exact same problem, they die, regardless if it was the lobes of the brain dying or whatever the case may be. And his, it was the extreme, and that's the reason that I love his case file so much and really wanted to present his as the main case file that we use as the jump-off point tonight, because his is so unique. His brain was literally mush, and I cannot exaggerate the fact that I'm not exaggerating that. His brain was really turned into a liquid substance. All 8 lobes were affected and just basically wiped out and gone. And science says that should have been zero consciousness, death. There should be no experiences whatsoever. If consciousness is the brain, then consciousness should be dead at that point. There should be no ability to have any type of conscious anything, any experience whatsoever. And yet near-death experiencers describe the exact same things, regardless if it's a mush brain or if it's a gunshot wound or whatever the case may be, a car accident, whatever the case, they all tell the exact same story, that neuroscience swears, or should I say scientism and dogmatic scientism and materialism, our enemies on this show, swear up and down that this cannot be, and yet
the paradox is that as my neocortex, the outer surface of the brain, the part that makes us human, as that was being devastated by this bacterial infection, in fact, my conscious awareness was growing tremendously. It's like being freed from the shackles of a prison. And that kind of expansion of conscious awareness completely defies anything that our modern neuroscience would try and postulate about the nature of consciousness itself.
And the question presented, the paradox that presented here is, why would an NDE exist at all? Why would there be so many NDE case files if neuroscience says that these things can't exist, especially when what they say is supposed to cause consciousness, the brain itself, is completely gone, and yet the conscious experience is more real at that point than it is when we're in this reality as we know it to begin with. And we're going to sit and ponder on that for just a couple moments while we take a network break right here, ladies and gentlemen, and we will be right back with more about near-death experiences and Dr. Eben Alexander after these messages. Don't you touch that dial. That's right.
This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Darkwolf's Den.
The Darkwolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Hi guys, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. Are you enjoying tonight's look at near-death experiences? I know I am. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up this video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best in common sense radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. Here's a look at your weather forecast for the weekend ahead. Tomorrow night, I will return Friday, January 15th. It'll be mostly bullying tomorrow night. That's right. I'm going to dive down the rabbit hole of bullying. Come along with me on the ride. Starts at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. All shows start at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then Saturday, partly wide awake. That's right, mostly wide awake, I should say. We're going to take a close look at the Wide Awakes, an 1860s political party, and its connection to known secret societies still in existence today. And then we're going to end out the weekend right with a cold front of Rumspringa. That's right, it's going to come down out of Michigan. And we're going to take a journey through the wild rabbit hole of Rumspringa. Again, that's Sunday, January 17th, 2021. Now, if you don't know what Rumspringa is, then Google it, okay? And join me Sunday night and find out. I'm having a lot of fun meeting a lot of the new members of Rippin' Rabbit Hole 2.0. If you have not been over to rippinrabbithole.com and signed up for a backstage pass, I strongly encourage you to do so. Our community-generated press is there for you. I'm so pleased David Vincent signed up, and you can too at the rippinrabbithole.com. That's RIPPINRABBITHOLE.com. Once you're there, you can explore around. We have featured news, everything from local Rippin' news to international news. And one of our reporters, Doran, has really been releasing some fantastic articles. And of course, today we had the sad breaking news of the loss of Siegfried and Roy. Icon, a legend in the magic and Las Vegas world. Sadly, gone but not forgotten. We're going to have a special tribute to Siegfried and Roy tomorrow night in the first part of the show. That's a look at your weekend forecast for the remaining weekend ahead. Of course, Rippin' Rabbit Hole has the most extended weekends on radio because we feel that's just common sense. We'll return you back now to Jerry Hicks and the DarkWolf's Den Show with NDE.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Show for Thursday, January 14th, 2021. Whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about things that are closer to the edge of reality, at least reality as we know it. And as last night we discussed the out-of-body experience and that consciousness can exist outside of the brain, and the near-death experience, you know, after the ability to, while you're alive, go outside of the body, what happens at the moment of death? Well, you know, they say a lot of people haven't come back to tell us, you know, you don't come back after you die. Well, some people actually have. And scientism will tell you that these are wrong and false and, you know, just pseudoscience, things like that. All these names that they like to tag on to us, but don't really make any sense. But before we get into that, we would like to give a shout out to everybody over at Ripon, Wisconsin, and Ripon Common Sense Radio's home base over there and flagship. We appreciate you guys over there listening every single week and love having you along for the ride. Also, we would like to give a shout out to everybody listening all the way around the world in 26 countries worldwide, as well as those of you guys over on the YouTube. We really appreciate you guys, as well as those listening over on the rippinrabbithole.com worldwide radio player. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't been over to the rippinrabbithole.com yet, definitely go over there and check out what we've got to offer. That is the RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a commodity that is becoming more and more rare in this world. We've got a social media alternative for you, a freedom of thought, freedom of choice, freedom of speech social media site that you need to check out. and it is Down the Rabbit Hole at therippinrabbithole.com. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely free. You can go over there and express free thought and free expression and free conversation. Absolutely free. So come on over and check out therippinrabbithole.com. That is RIPONRABBITHOLE.com, where we stand for freedom, free speech, free thought, free choice, ladies and gentlemen. And we would love to see like-minded individuals like you over there, whether you want to discuss the paranormal or current events and freedoms. That is up to you, but we would love to see you down the rabbit hole at therippinrabbithole.com. Speaking of going down the rabbit hole, we've been going down the rabbit hole, as I was saying a moment ago, about consciousness and near-death experiences, and the fact that there's so many case files that have the exact same information, even though scientism and dogmatic belief systems say that these cannot and should not exist when there's no ability for the body to have consciousness. So even the idea of consciousness existing outside of the brain to neuroscience is ridiculous. However, there's more and more and more evidence that piles up over time, and we presented a lot of evidence this month already to suggest that consciousness exists well outside the brain. And as it was said before by the good doctor, and before we broke to the break a moment ago and come into the second half and started asking the question, what is the ability to have an experience that is more real than the conscious experience that we experience in the what we call reality, when there's no way that consciousness should have existed in the first place, according to what we call accepted science.
So I began to realize in the months after my coma that I had a tremendous amount to explain, because in fact there were time anchors in my memories that proved that in fact the vast majority of the coma journey of my NDE had to happen between days 1 and 5 of my coma. And that was all, that whole interval of time, my doctors had plenty of evidence that my neocortex was not working. And therefore I had a lot of explaining to do. And that was the beginning of what has now been almost a 9-year journey of deeper understanding, investigating deeply into consciousness, developing a pattern of meditation. I try to meditate daily. I've worked with a group called Sacred Acoustics to try and come up with tools that help people get into very deep transcendental conscious states. And this is all about returning into consciousness, exploring consciousness, because what you begin to realize is the modern scientific model that replaces the old production model. That would be that the brain produces consciousness out of physical matter. And no one has ever gone anywhere with that model. It's hopelessly lost. People who support that model can't even give you the next sentence of how the physical brain might create consciousness. And yet the scientific model that is replacing it is very powerful.
Just to reiterate, this guy was a neurosurgeon, all right, well classically trained in academia and their consistent dogmatism and scientism that they teach as a belief system in academic courses. But now it is being brought to light against scientism in many, many forms, that what they're doing is absolutely wrong to science, and their theories are leading nowhere, and they have no more answers than they did in the beginning. So they are clearly failing at this initiative and need to try something different. And thank goodness there's actually something different that is coming into the scientific theory space. Check out this theory.
And that is what is known as filter theory. Looks at the brain as a reducing valve or filter.
Or as I earlier was talking about the radio analogy, right? The brain being a receiver and transceiver of consciousness opposed to a creator of consciousness. Well, this takes that a step further. And again, like I was saying, when the processor is damaged or the receiver is damaged, then the stream from the radio source is not going to be interpreted correctly by the radio itself in order to come out correctly. It'll have mixed signals and garbled information. And that's also what you would find if the consciousness stream coming into the brain was interrupted. It would have the mixed signals and garbled information, but the conscious experience isn't in the brain, so that would be something completely different. But I like where the doctor's about to go with the analogy he's about to give here as far as filter theory goes.
An analogy might be you can study everything you want about the brain, and that would be like studying the display on your computer monitor. And yes, it's important to understand how that display works, but don't think that understanding all the workings of that physical display is going to explain what appears on the screen. You have to go much deeper. The physical realm is the display, but the much deeper is the realm of consciousness and mind.
And I couldn't agree more with the good doctor, because what he's saying is basically what I've been saying the whole time. You can look in the brain all you want. You won't find consciousness. You won't find a little guy sitting in the brain telling you what to do. But we all know that we are conscious. It is more than just the brain.
In fact, quantum physicists have been trying to tell us for 100 years that consciousness is fundamental in the universe. That's what Werner Heisenberg and Paul Dirac, Louis de Broglie, even Einstein, although he was kind of dragged kicking and screaming to the grave at the end with his failure to see the reality of entanglement and spooky action at a distance. But they all realized that you had to put consciousness as fundamental.
And towards the end of the month, we'll start to wrap up this series on consciousness and go into the all the theories presented on consciousness. We've heard a couple of them so far, from panpsychism to the filter theory. And like I said, in the last episodes of the month, we'll cover those more in depth.
And that, of course, is a very tough pill for the materialist scientific world to swallow. And there you have to look at the 400-year rise of the scientific revolution and realize that back in the days of Galileo and Francis Bacon, Giordano Bruno, Isaac Newton, that if they tread anywhere close to the world of mind and consciousness, they were likely to be burned at the stake, as Bruno indeed was, by the church.
People that were considered heretics and madmen at the time are considered heroes and geniuses today, if that tells you anything about those today telling you the way you should think.
Because that was their territory, and they wanted anyone studying natural sciences to stick to the material world and the laws that govern it. And then, of course, with quantum physics, what we end up realizing is you cannot separate mind from what is being observed. In fact, mind appears to be fundamental.
And for evidence at this point, once again, I point to the double slit experiment, which to this day has not been fully defined as to why consciousness affects the outcome of said experiment.
And the most robust philosophical position supporting that idea is one known as metaphysical or ontological idealism. And in our book, Living in a Mindful Universe, which is out in October of 2017, we explore that possibility very exuberantly because that is actually where things go. And we have to realize that no human being has ever witnessed anything other than the inside of their own consciousness. It's something that my co-author Karen Newell and I call the supreme illusion.
The only experiences we'll ever know are those experiences that we have for ourselves, right? If somebody hasn't been to Disneyland, then we don't know the experience of everybody that has been to Disneyland, for instance. So it's those individual experiences that govern who and what we are. It's those individual experiences that we'll never be able to understand from another person's point of view. Who's to say that the shade of green that I see and what you call green aren't two different things in reality? What you could see is what I call red, and what I could see is what you call green, but we could all be agreeing on the name of it, right? It's a completely individual experience.
And that is that everything that is out there in the world, when I have people and have other, the trees, the birds, the sky, the beautiful stars and galaxies in the night sky, all of that, our brain and mind convince us we're witnessing the out there, but what we actually experience is an internal construct. And I cannot stress enough the importance of realizing the power and seduction of that supreme illusion. And to actually get deeper to truth, we have to kind of go through that illusion.
To get deeper to truth, we must go through the illusion that is being presented to us. Absolutely. And in this day and age, there's a lot of illusion being presented on the television and in different sources. So it is really, really imperative that we learn to see through the illusions, including the illusions that blind us to the truths about consciousness.
And this is part of why meditation is so important, going into consciousness. And really, you cannot think your way to knowing this. You cannot just read the books and just watch the DVDs and just go to the meetings. The only way to actually get it is to go within. And that, of course, is why Karen Newell and I often give these play shops, as we call them, using sacred acoustics tones.
And it is also this ability that I believe is used to literally manifest things into one's reality or into one's life. Yes, I fully believe in thought form manifestation. It is absolutely, in my opinion, a very real thing, a thing that I've had personal experience in. And I do believe that this would definitely explain why that is possible as you meditate and go deeper and connect to that conscious one mind. You're able to manipulate, I wouldn't even say manipulate, you're able to manifest things into reality using the consciousness that controls reality, in my opinion. And again, I'll get into more of those theories and my own theories as we get further and deeper into the month.
The power of differential frequency sound to liberate conscious awareness from the illusion of the here and now is very powerful. And this is the exploration that I've been on now for 9 years since my coma. Very important to point out that this is a revolution. My own experience in awakening parallels exactly what is going on in the world of neuroscience and philosophy of mind, and coming to a deeper answer about the mind-body question.
And as we touched on the last couple weeks, also known as the hard problem of science or the hard problem of consciousness.
And in fact, all the answers around issues of afterlife, reincarnation, every bit of that depends on how this mind-body question is resolved over time.
And for those interested in the topic of reincarnation and past lives, next week that is going to be a topic that we are going to touch on, so make sure you look out for that.
And the evidence emerging now, as I said, is very strongly that consciousness is fundamental in the universe, which completely opens the door to the afterlife and to reincarnation. It's crucial to point out that the Orthodox teaching that I grew up with, and that many people in this country and around the world have grown up with, of one incarnation, then eternal heaven or hell, is absolutely nonsense in the setting of NDEs and a lot of what we bring back to this world, and the evolving understanding of the nature of consciousness.
Now, I would like to clarify something really quickly. He said that the narrative that is fed to us by Christianity as far as the single life and the heaven and hell paradigm isn't real, and I will agree with that conjecture. However, I would like to point out that every NDE case has also spoken of the single God consciousness, or the God entity that has been what's the word I'm looking for, interacted with. I've heard many people speak of an entity that they spoke with, most likely what one would consider God, right? So to say that the paradigm of heaven and hell is wrong, that's a good possibility. However, to say that NDE experiencers don't come back saying that they experience some type of God consciousness or unconditional love and unjudgment consciousness that we spoke of earlier in the show, then that still states that there is a God and they met God. So please don't misunderstand what is being said here. It is just bringing the paradigm of the heaven hell part of it into question. That does not discount or disqualify the fact that all of them have come back talking of a single, unified, unconditional, unjudgmental type of love that would be described as a God love or a God consciousness or the one mind or whatever name you would like to put on it.
And when you see that consciousness is primordial, that in fact it's best to look at all of sentient life, not just humans, not just life on Earth, but all of sentient life throughout the cosmos as participating in this beautiful journey together, but all as one mind doing the evolution. I think a beautiful example of this is the life review that you often encounter in 30 to 50% of near-death experiences. And in the life review, important to point out that we experience the impact of our actions and thoughts on others, not from our point of view, but from theirs. And so the life review is a perfect demonstration that the boundaries of self in many ways are artificial. They're there as a construct. And that's what allows for this beautiful dance of being in these bodies, living these lives with the full emotional power of what we go through. We're all here in soul school to learn and to teach.
And I like how we put that, the soul school, if you will. We're here to learn lessons, and that's one reason I also believe in reincarnation as well as time-locked events, because I believe there are certain events that we choose in between lives that is got to happen opposed to the free will choices we make, and those would be the life review choices and what we decide we're going to do for the next round. That is, of course, my opinion, but that does seem to bear out the facts.
But this is kind of like the higher, the oversoul, the one mind is doing the growing through this experience, through the multiple beings and entities, and this includes all life. All animal and plant life is involved in this. It's not uniquely human at all. Although, of course, our human brain and mind offers a different kind of perspective and a way to discuss it. But it would be very misleading to think that animals and plant life are not involved in this beautiful dance of the one mind, doing its dreaming as it is learning and growing. This is all about the evolution of consciousness that occurs through that process.
And like he said, just as well as it's not just only humans, it's not just the Earth either. Everything in the galaxy that is consciousness and the universe that is consciousness also is attributing to this one single conscious entity mind that we are all connected to.
And we're coming to realize that one mind is a very important notion, and of course that's been there in religious teachings going back millennia. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Most fundamental principle, and that's exactly what this one mind is all about. If I hurt another being, I'm hurting myself. And NDEs teach that in a very beautiful way. And this is really about recovering some ancient lessons. It's not like this is big news, even though the consolidation of science and spirituality is absolutely earth-shattering news, because it's leading to a revolution in human thinking that is unprecedented, and that I believe will make the Copernican revolution, where we move from thinking of the Earth as the center of the universe to the sun, look like child's play. A tremendous awakening for humanity is upon us even now.
And once again, I fully agree. And I like the speculation that we had last night with the out-of-body talk when we discussed the idea of becoming Homo projectus and the idea that we could project ourselves out, our consciousness out away from our bodies as a natural element of being human, that being an evolutionary phase possibly way down the line. But the idea is still there, and when you have conversations like this about near-death experiences and the true reality of what consciousness is, it really does make you question if that really could be the case, right? But what do you think? Do you think that near-death experiences are a real thing, that all the case files that bear out the exact same facts are actually very genuine and legit, or do you think that perhaps NDEs and OBEs and consciousness is definitely all in your brain and scientism is absolutely correct on that? Ladies and gentlemen, I personally believe that consciousness is all around us, that the brain is merely an interpretation thereof. But I guess we'll have to save the rest of this conversation for next week. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? In the end, all I can do is lay out a case for you and let you make the final decision. So in the case of near-death experiences and whether or not consciousness exists outside of the body and can come back after a near-death experience, ladies and gentlemen, you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the Darkwolf's Den Show for Thursday, January 14th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing for this week, but don't you worry, the weekend fun is only just begun. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you come back tomorrow night where the Animals of Radio carry on the weekend. Right, that's right, our buddy AJ the Rippin' Rabbit will be back for the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show. That's right, he'll be discussing bullying, a very, very serious topic, and a topic that we all need to take a lesson in so that we can recognize when we're being bullied. Sometimes it isn't as open and blatant as you might think it is. And then on Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, January 16th, 2021, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit will be back with an all-new episode about the Wide Awakes. Is he talking about the Truthers? No, actually, this was a political party and a political movement, one that he will be discussing and talking about on Saturday night, one that I cannot wait to learn about myself. Then on Sunday, January 16th, 2021, January 17th, 2021, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit will be back to close out the weekend with his last episode of the weekend of the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show. That's right, he'll be talking about Rumspringa. This is apparently a rite of passage in some cultures, and AJ will touch way more on that on Sunday night. Make sure you tune in to learn something new all weekend long, ladies and gentlemen, right here on the Rippin' Rabbit Hole, Rippin' Common Sense Radio. Speaking of the Rippin' Rabbit Hole, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you jump over to the rippinrabbithole.com. That is RIPON, That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Over there, you're going to find the Rippin' Rabbits hanging out in the Backstage 24/7 lounge. That's right. Make sure you sign up for a free backstage pass. Make sure you get your membership over there and join us backstage for some amazing conversation. Also, if you want to keep the conversation going 24/7, 365, and you want to use a free social media network that believes in free speech, definitely do come over and check out the rippinrabbithole.com and jump down the rabbit hole. That's right, that is our new section over there, our social media section, and we would love to see you guys over there carrying on the conversations that we have here. And free speech reigns, ladies and gentlemen, over on the rippinrabbithole.com. There's all kinds of fun stuff to do over there. If you'd like to send us a shout out to play on the air, make sure you go down to the bottom of every page on the rippinrabbithole.com and find that big red button. That's right, go ahead and record us 30 seconds of audio and send it to the studio automatically. We will get it on the radio. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, get your voice heard on the rippinrabbithole.com. That's actually pretty much of an honor around here, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to see you guys over there. One last thing, while you're over there, make sure that you sign up for our newsletter that comes out every Wednesday evening, and it will have all of the topics and shows that we're going to be discussing all weekend long. So if you want to keep up with what's going on here on the Darkwolf's Den Show, or AJ's Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show, or any information that's going on with Rippin' Common Sense Radio, make sure you sign up for that absolutely free newsletter. We do not sell your information. We do not spam your email box. You get one and one only once a week, ladies and gentlemen. So that is definitely important information that you do not want to miss out on. Also, whether you're over on the Rippin' Rabbit Hole YouTube channel or the Darkwolf's Den Show YouTube channel on demand. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, that thumbs up. We'd really appreciate that. And ring that bell. Make sure you select all notifications so you know every time we go live. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. With that said, on behalf of AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Walt House, everyone at Rippin' Common Sense Radio, everybody listening around the world wide and on the internet, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And remember, until next week, stay awake, but dare to dream. How? Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonder.